Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Emmy.
And welcome back to another episode of The Bestiary, Monster Manual A through Z. What are we looking at this week, Emmy?
Oh, this week we're talking about the monster.
Behold! It's on the front cover. It's the Beholder, of course. In my mind, one of the most, if not the most classic D&D monster.
I don't even think that's an arguable point. They're one of the most classic properties. They're one of the original monsters. You see them on all of the artwork for D&D. When you see a D&D in-joke on anything, comics, TVs, movies, you know it's going to be a Beholder.
Yeah. It's been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
Came with the first supplement to D&D, Greyhawk, along with some very interesting art, which I happen to love because it's so bad.
He's just round. He's just round with lips.
Hi there. We've given him the in-house name of Dale here at the Adventurers Pack.
Hi.
I'm Dale.
Hi.
Welcome to my lair.
It's pretty cool. I've got a shag carpet and some psychedelic tapestries.
Of course he has a shag carpet.
Would he not? He's Dale.
But Dale aside, the Beholder is actually a pretty great, terrifying, fascinating creature in all its forms. They are dreamt into existence, which I think is awesome, and I think there's no way in which these guys can't be in some way inspired by 70s prog rock. Each Beholder thinks it's the most perfect version of all Beholder kind, so they're intensely arrogant and hateful of all others.
And each other.
They are, these ruthless tyrants that, have these massive intellects and can try and sort of establish whole criminal organizations and conspiracies. I love them.
They're all brain in a very literal sense.
Yeah.
Because they were dreamed into existence, uniqueness is really the name of the game with these guys. They all look completely different, which is, of course, part of the source of why they dislike each other is, aha, you are slightly more violent than me. Things like that really grow into large things, but their personalities are also completely different. They have different goals and aspirations, and with intellects that big, they can really set about making years and years long plans to control cities, control farmland, destroy whatever they want, steal whatever they want, enslave whatever they want. They can do really whatever they want, and that's really so much fun.
I see what you mean.
Ah!
And in terms of those unique personalities, they've inspired, some of the most classic personalities, villains in D&D. I mean, you have the Xanathar, honourable mention to his fish, Silgar.
Participation.
Love you, Silgar.
Ribbon. On his tail.
I mean, he's got his own book. You might have heard of him. He's a pretty big deal.
Crime Lord of Waterdeep. He's really the gold standard, I feel, when it comes to creating a Beholder. This is how far and crazy you can go with your Beholders. So if you're making one of your own, go quite that far. So, to start it off, we've got the standard Beholder. This guy is...
He's gross.
He's gross. I love this color. I know Beholders can come in pretty much any color, but this purple color to me is so nasty.
It looks fleshy.
Yeah, I feel like if you were to reach out and touch him, he'd just be a little bit cool to the touch.
Clammy.
Yeah. But I know one of the other things I love about this image is you can tell that main eye and a few of the others are trained on you, and it does that thing where it follows you wherever it goes.
And there's that fierce intelligence behind it. You've got the maw of snarling teeth. It's just a cool piece of art for a pretty cool monster. I think one of my favourite things about the Beholder is how random it can be. In terms of its main abilities with its eye lasers, from slow to sleep to disintegration to petrification, that's not the DM's choice. It's you roll that d20 and behold, that's what you are going to use.
You get 3 of them, and if you're using a legendary action, a 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them do damage. A lot of them do variously bizarre and hilarious, while terrible, but also kind of hilarious things. There's a charm ray, there's a telekinetic ray, there's a sleep ray. And while all of these things really suck, they're not disintegration ray, or death ray, which can knock you straight on the floor in a very literal sense if they hit you.
Yeah.
He's got that anti-magic cone, which can also work against his own things.
Yep.
So if you're in his eye, he can choose to have it so no magic can be going through that front eye, which is sucky.
Yeah.
Gonna have to get behind him. He's slow. He's only gonna hover at 120 feet, but his range with those rays...
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't need to get up close and personal to hurt you, so...
Yeah.
Not really an issue for him. I just love how unpredictable these guys can be, both in terms of the DM running them and players fighting them. Pretty respectable stats across the board. Some decent saving throws.
All in his intellectual stats.
Yep.
For me, one of my weirdly favorite flavor text things about the Beholder is that their layers, it says, are carved using their disintegration rays, but because which ray they're using is random, it means that somewhere in time there's just a Beholder sitting in a cave going,
waiting for the right cue.
Waiting for it, just trying to send sleep and charm at the rock. And
eventually getting the one he wants.
Yeah. It's hilarious and bizarre and really spooky also because it has the time to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about the Beholder.
So moving on to the DeathTyrant, I want to take a moment to just appreciate how badass and metal this art is. It's this horrific, alien-like, cyclopean skull surrounded by these eerie points of light, which are like the remnants of its tentacles, I'm guessing?
Yes, much like a lich, its former eyes are lit up by little lights. It's just so spooky and awful.
Yeah, I mean, imagine this thing coming out of a dark alleyway at you, or dungeon, wherever you happen to find yourselves.
God.
I mean, the name is awesome as well, DeathTyrant. I mean, tell me there's not a band out there with that name.
If they're not, they're really missing an opportunity.
I mean, there should be.
I also love that there's all these little holes in the skull where the nerves used to be from the eye stalks. It's so creepy and visceral and awful. This is great.
I think one of my favorite things about them is how they come into existence.
Oh, it's so body horror.
And so the Beholder generally is created by the dreams of another Beholder. A DeathTyrant comes into being when it dreams of a state of existence beyond death, and it makes itself undead by its dream, and its skin and stuff just starts to like fall off and stuff. It's pretty body horror.
Yeah.
But it's great. I love it. Yeah, these things are nasty. Beholders, but worse.
Yeah, I would say it's great till you try to fight it. It has way more immunity conditions. So the Beholder's just immune to being prone because it's a floating eyeball. Mm-hmm. This is immune to so many effects.
Charm, exhaustion, paralyzed, petrified, poison, prone. It's a big evil skull.
Yeah. And its saving throws go way up.
Through the roof.
So if you're trying to do anything to it, just kiss that goodbye. And its rays are just a little bit harder. The DC is just a little bit higher. And it can hit you on the ethereal planes.
Yeah, which is nuts.
Yeah, so if you're using Blink, I personally love Blink. It's one of my favorite weird things to do in the middle of something. Is to just blink out. Doesn't matter.
Can still hit you.
Oh my god. Its lair effects are that way too. It can randomly pop up an eyeball in and around its lair, and it can just shoot you with the death ray from beyond.
I mean, as well as that, if you're within, I think it's a mile of its lair, and you finish a long rest, it's like, oh great, you can be hit with a random eye ray, because it can see you through the ethereal plane. It's really quite intimidating. I think arguably the worst thing, because as we've been saying, a lot of the DeathTyrant stuff is just Beholder, but worse. The negative energy cone that it can direct wherever it chooses. You reach 0 hit points in that, you're dead, and then you're a zombie.
Yeah, exactly. You're coming right on back. The Beholder just has an anti-magic cone, but it can kind of shoot itself in the foot with that. This guy, it's so much worse. I mean, beholders in general have a lot of control over you after you die. With the death ray and the disintegration ray, it has a really good chance of knocking you out and making really serious problems for your character coming back. But in this case, you're a zombie, so then the rest of the players are going to have to deal with you and then maybe try to resurrect you later. I mean, if you're fighting a DeathTyrant, you're probably at a high enough level where you're going to be able to talk about some resurrections, provided you have a good cleric.
Or you've just made some really poor choices.
Yeah, generally awesome. Last, but certainly least, the Spectator. This guy, I love the art of this guy. It's just so bizarre and hilarious.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, you can hear him. He's all tongue, and he's just a wee version of the Beholder in pretty much every way, which really makes sense for what he is.
Yeah.
These guys are not made like other Beholders are. They're summoned into existence by a creator from Beholder bits.
Yeah, so if you're a summoner and you're after a guard or a sentry for one of your important magic bits, you might want to get yourself some Beholder parts and make yourself a Spectator. Only 4 eye stalks on these guys, less terrifying eye rays. The only one that can really hurt you is its ray of wounding. The others are all effect-based, but still nothing to turn your nose up at if you're at low level and you come across one of these guys.
And that's more likely when you're going to see one, because their challenge rating's only 3, and much like pretty much any other Beholder, if they see another one of themselves, they're most likely to try and kill each other.
Because they still think they're the best version of what they are, and hate all other versions of themselves.
Yes.
These ones, though, probably the ones that you're most likely to actually talk to, unless your DM has decided that your other Beholders also have other languages.
Which is a very fair thing that I'm sure you would see.
Yeah.
But they only come with the 2 base languages, Undercommon and Deep Speech. This guy's telepathic.
Yeah.
So no matter what, you're probably going to be able to hold on a very hilarious conversation with him, because the other fun thing about these guys is they're usually insane.
Yeah, because they can be set to guard a place for 101 years, and they often will sort of take on really sort of quirky aspects of their creator's personality. So they'll imagine enemies that aren't there and sort of try and impersonate the way that the summoner sounds and things like that. They're quite fun in that regard.
Yeah, they'll entertain themselves forever. And then if they aren't doing anything anymore, then they just get really weird and will just kind of wander around. Really insane. Yeah, they go loopier. They can create their own food and water, so they're set to stay in that space, and they'll probably just... The space and the thing they're guarding is what's mostly important, and that's the other thing, they're not particularly aggressive.
No.
So you'll probably chat with this one before you'll make any move on it. It'll talk to you because it's lovely. Probably the funniest thing it can do is spell reflection, which is, again, at a low level, just one of those weird, quirky things to introduce your players to. So if you throw a spell at it, there's a chance it might just whack it back at you or one of your friends.
I just love the idea of... sitting behind the DM screen and saying, "So what spell was that you cast?" Yeah, it's back at you now, and the player just being like, "What?
Hi!"
Yeah. Low level, fun. They can do a few things that are, for that low level, quite interesting. You don't get many challenge rating 3s that can do stuff like spell reflection. Yeah. So yeah, they've got a few things up their sleeves.
Yeah, they're here to introduce you to further and scarier things to come at higher levels.
Behold, it's the end of the video. Thank you for joining us here on the Bestiary again. Click here to see some of our other videos. Click here to subscribe. Don't forget to click that bell icon to be notified of any new videos. And leave us a comment down below. Ever fought a Beholder? What's your most memorable memory of facing one of these guys? Let us know, and we'll see you next time when we talk about blights.